Welcome to Epigenetics Unleashed. My name's Josh. I'm the co-founder of ThinkFit. I've been training people for over 14 years and I've moved into using epigenetics to help people transform their lives. I really believe this is the missing link for so many people who have struggled with their health and fitness over their whole life. So in this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to HealthTypes and help you understand why it will change your life. Essentially, just to touch on it again, epigenetics is the study or the science around how the environment influences your gene reactions. Your gene reactions are essentially what create actions in your body that end up making you the way you are, whether that's looking physically healthy, being unwell, creating disease, or just feeling your best. So that's why I think it's a vital thing to understand essentially what makes you tick or flick on or flick off essentially in the gene process. And going through today's presentation, hopefully you can understand. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments. I'd love to address them because this stuff seems not real. Like it seems science fiction, it seems like horoscopy, and I completely understand it because that's how I felt initially. But I really want to break the mold and help people understand why it's so empowering and why it's helping so many of my clients get these results that they've never been able to get before. So firstly, what we want to think about is like, if we have two different people, and I'll try and throw up some graphics and stuff, but if we have two different people and we give them exactly the same fitness program, do we really expect they're going to get the same results? For instance, we train a lot of people in Western Sydney where their body shapes, they're very different because of the amount of body fat they hold. They're upwards of 20 kilo plus for a lot of the clients, and moving your body is not the same for someone who's highly muscular that can perform movements really well and biomechanically because they've just lived that sort of lifestyle where you can support them. Alternatively, I want to ask, we know that we don't give the same diet to people who have diabetes versus the ones that don't. But what about the ones that are genetically predisposed to have diabetes? Don't you think we should give them a different diet approach and not just the one that works for those muscly people that were probably less likely to have type 2 diabetes? Type 1 is a little bit different, it's a bit more genetic based. But just in that reference, we are unique and we need to have a unique approach to work with individuals so they can get their best results. I don't want to downplay it, like being healthier and choosing healthy options is still good for you. But when you can know what is precisely good for you based on your genes, that's where incredible results are happening across my gym. The reason I found this so interesting was when I learned about PH360 and the system that I use and they use to help transform people's lives. Essentially, there's studies around people, non-responders. So this can be both in exercise and nutrition. There's studies where people have gone and done aerobic training and actually not improved their VO2 peak, as well as doing the reverse and then testing them for using strength training, and their VO2 peak has increased. It sounds stupid because you should just be able to give someone a stimulus and they should be able to respond to it. But because we are so unique, we're built differently and some people have different adaptations. So I was like, that makes sense. There's also a study around high intensity activity not being effective for fat loss for some people, especially in the morning. And I've seen this, I've introduced this into my gym for people who I fell into the Guardian category, and we saw incredible results. They were dropping weight, they were less stressed, they weren't snacking as much, and it was fantastic. We also need to understand that food choices make a different impact on different people. So in saying that, there's a health type, the same health type that I was just talking about, the Guardian, which we'll learn about today. When they eat later at night, their insulin response is far greater than someone else. So this means they're going to store more of the energy that they're putting into their body later at night. And that's the endomorphic as well. So not just the Guardian, the diplomats as well, but we'll touch on that as we go. Then there's also just mental coaching and training. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the leading psychological techniques, I guess, to get people to change their behaviors, is only 40% effective. So obviously there is different things we need to do for different people, and that is what we are doing, and that's why I want to share it with everyone, because I believe that there is just so many people that I've trained over the years that have missed out on seeing results because we've tried to feed them this one size fits all, or things that don't work for their body type, okay? So as we go through, I really want you to understand we are unique, and I believe building self-awareness is key in, it's like the greatest discovery in life, because when you know what works for you, you can work in alignment with your body, you can reduce the chance of disease, you can improve just how you feel about yourself. The amount of people when they finally just understood that some of those things they thought they were weird about themselves were actually natural, they stopped fighting against it. Like a busy mind for a diplomat that can't really concentrate and just get stuck in the head, to understand that's their biology they just feel better about it. They still need to work on it and funnel it, but to understand that, they just feel so much more relieved. So let's dive in. I want to teach you about the intro to HealthTypes. Now, this is the foundation we use in order to understand someone's genetic profile, we could say. And when we have this health type, we do this test. So if you want to see the test, I've done it on my Instagram. My mum, she got recorded as we measured her up, and it takes all these musculoskeletal measurements into consideration. It has like thousands of ratios, as I'll touch on later, as well as some genetic questions. So understanding like your eye color, your hair color, widow's peak, like there's so many questions. It's so fascinating to see what goes into these calculations to build, essentially, well, to understand what health type you are. And it's not that you are one health type, and we'll dive into this in a later series, but it's where most of your overlying genetics will have predispositions in terms of if you do this, more than likely this is going to occur. And that's why it's a great place to start. So learning how we're different, it involves heaps of different sciences, up to 15 different sciences. Essentially the study of anthropometry, which was the ratios and stuff we talk about, we'll dive into. Embryology is the study of when you are in embryo within your mum, when you're being created. And then morphology. So morphology is like in high school you may have heard of ectomorph, endomorph, mesomorph. With these things, essentially we're able to understand how the health type works. So first we're going to dive into anthropometry. With anthropometry, I struggle saying that, but with the understanding ratios, it can help us understand so many things. So if you just take out like your waist to hip ratio, we understand that you're probably, when you're in certain ratios, you're going to be more overweight and higher increased chance of disease. When we look at thickness of people's necks, the thicker the neck, the more likely you're actually going to develop type 2 diabetes or other things in related to that. Now, when we put these in relation with a few other things, we're able to understand how your genes have played a role in your life through the whole span of your life. And once we have these ratios, we can kind of take a look back in time and understand your embryological development. So when we talk about embryological development, it's about the 15th day when you're in your mum's womb that your body starts to decide where it's going to place energy in terms of its dermal layers. So when we think about dermal layers, that's that mesomorph, endomorph, ectomorph. But the derm layers, we all have all three, but the body starts to decide where it puts more effort and focus. And say, the interesting thing I found about this, I was like, I was always like, there's not just three shapes. Like I look at people and there's so many more. With this system, it shows us that there is far more. But having this base understanding that there is three, so the endoderm is essentially more of your digestive tissues, like your liver lining, your pancreas creation, and then just anything to do with the digestive tract. When we look at the mesoderm, it's more muscular. It's more your cardiac system. It's more your blood pumping. It's everything to do with that more muscular, more athletic type development. Then when we look at the ectoderm, we're looking at more of the spine, the skin, the hair, everything to do with the nervous system. So as I said, it's not that you don't get the others, it's that your body decides where the energy goes because of the environment in where you're being built. And genetics do play a factor, but they're still trying to understand that a little bit more. But it's mainly like what is happening and where your body decides to put the energy. As you develop, as I said, time goes past and your body starts to decide, okay, I'm going to put more effort into the mesoderm. And within the mesoderm, it's going to mean that your body becomes more predisposed to certain hormones throughout your development. And that's how we're able to look back in time, because when we understand how your hormones have interacted on your body in certain environments throughout the span of your life, we're able to say you were exposed to X amount of hormones throughout. And that's how we're able to build these epigenetic profiles, these health types, to understand where we can use the right food, the right nutrition, the right lifestyle, the right stress, the right work to effectively build the best environment for you. So now I touched on it a little bit. I'll post up a video here. We have the mesoderm, we have the endoderm, and then we have the ectoderm around the circle. You will see that there's an activator name there. So this is the health types that we'll talk about. With the activator, they're mainly mesodermic. We'll move on to the connector. The connector is more mesoderm and endoderm. So throughout development, their bodies decided to spread the energy through those. Then we look at the endoderm. It's more your guardian clients, your endomorphic people. We have your diplomats, same endomorphic, but also ectodermic. We then have the sensors. So the sensors are purely ectodermic, and then the crusader is mesoecto. This information is incredible. As I said, it leverages over 500 different ratios between your body, 10,000 data points to help create these profiles, to understand where it's best to start for your health right now. And the reason I say right now is because your health is a spectrum. And through this AI system, we're able to understand where you land on the spectrum and the best approach we need to take to get you to where you need to be. The one I missed was the phenotype. So the phenotype is essentially you right now. Everything going on in your body is your phenotype. We have long phenotypical reactions, which are like your bone growth and things like that. Mediums like blood pressure and stress, and then short term can be anything from like your pulse and stuff like that. As we understand this, we can pretty much judge a book by a cover. It's incredible the information we can grab from just looking at someone's external, and this process, this science, this education just really highlights these ideas. But as I said, I just want to make it clear, like, there is so many different sciences that go into this. It does look a little bit star signy, like Libra, whatever, but there is so many things that account to these health type profiles. And it is not just the fact that you are a health type. For me, I'm a crusader, but I sit on like the 80-degree side. And what that means is I actually have crossovers for diplomat. When I read my profile, I actually see in my mind section, which tells me how my brain functions, that there's certain things that align with the diplomat behavioral style. So there is far more than just the 2D image we see. We also have the 3D, 4D, I think 5D it works out to be, and how it works over time and how your body's been exposed to things. The cool thing is I also am slightly closer to activator, so I will have some crossover for that in terms of taking action and things like that. And that's what we learn over time as we go through your profile and we understand a bit more about you. Any questions, pop them below. Another thing that fascinates me completely, I just touched on it actually in terms of the mind. So I'll post this photo, hopefully it fits here. If not, I'll post it over the top of me. Essentially, what they've done is they've mapped brain activity to the health types. So what we understand from the ectomorphic people, so your sensors, your crusaders, some of your diplomats, is that they have high functioning prefrontal cortex. And then also in terms of, for me, I know one in particular that really brought so much awareness to myself was when I listen to people talk, I more listen to what the meaning conveyed rather than the words, and the pitch can really set me off, which is really fascinating, right? Like when you can understand those things about yourself, you can step back and understand why maybe things don't sit with you too well. And I'll pop that one up so you can understand that. And that's all based on neurobiology. So understanding someone's hormone profile through this system, we're able to understand which health type, which can give us an indication of which areas of their brain is working in accordance. We then we'll dive into each health type now on a little bit deeper, just so you can get a base understanding. What I'll do is I'll contrast the two sides though. So what we're going to start on is the activator, and then we'll move on to the diplomats. The activator is typically more a reactive person, then more neurotic, and then the diplomats usually more agreeable and introverted. For the activator, what we notice is they sit on the 95 to 150 degrees on the circle. They're usually shorter in height, particularly through their femurs. So we know that people that are exposed to more testosterone, such as their activators, have shorter femurs. This is just a biological thing as they grow through. But what this does mean is that the other areas of the body change. So they have a more V-shaped body. They have a square type build. They're naturally more muscular because of the testosterone, right? And then a square or angular jaw. When we look at the hormone influences, we're looking at testosterone, as I just mentioned. And what this means is they're just like, they have high levels of oxidative stress. They really enjoy short, intense bouts of energy. They really need to be fed regularly because they have that high energy input-output. They just need to be fed consistently. When they feel their best is usually when they're moving the most. And they have a really great capacity to respond to situations, especially they love challenges. So finding a job or, exercise that's going to suit this person, it needs to have variety so that they can get that in. They also love to be competitive. They can be very direct. And what we also know about the health types is some have what we call chronobiology, and like the early bird night owl, the activator in particular, are more early bird people. We then look at the diplomats at the other side of the circle, a bit more easygoing. What we notice, they sit between 270 and 330 degrees. They are usually taller, broader, and more enduring in nature. Because as the circle, as I said, they get crossovers from other behaviors and whatnot, not behaviors, other health types. What we see is when they are closer to the center, they have that more ectomorphic crossover in body and behaviors as well. And then when we move towards the guardian, they're a little bit larger in frame and things like that. When we talk about hormonal influence, serotonin is the main driver for diplomats. So they love their time and space. They love to think about things. If you've got someone in your life that likes to build this like tree of knowledge and not really take action, they typically can be a bit of a diplomat. They get stressed by immediacy. So putting things straight onto them can really affect them personally. Then they're also strong and steady. They have these big Viking-ish bodies that really let them endure a lot of things, whether it's exercise, whether it's, work. And being able to support that body, we need to make sure we're feeding it the right things. So for these body, because they are larger, they have larger digestive systems, they need a more plant-based diet, which I was against for a long time. I've introduced it. I've seen plenty of improvements across the board for these people. And understanding that the changes feel natural to them, I thought it would be hard, really made it fascinating for me as well. They're typically easygoing, but they are a late chronotype, so they are the night owl type people. So you can see you have like this high active person and then this steady and stable person across the circle because they developed in different ways as they grew up. It seems weird, but it makes sense to me as you go through and learn more and more of this stuff. We then have the Crusader and the Guardian. So the Crusader, very conscientious, like really reward driven, really wants to push forward for things. And the Guardian, they love stability. They don't want to do too much. They're happy where they are and they just want to nurture people. So as we dive into the profiles, let's look at the Crusader. For the Crusader, they're sitting between the 30 and 90 degrees in the circle. So they're the ectomorph, mesomorph influence. They usually have a leaner frame, smaller wrists and ankles, but as for me, see bigger upper body, taller towards the 85-90 area, and generally taller than an activator, can be shorter through that 50 to 60 range though. They can put on muscle, but it's still a hard gainer. When I got super lean, I was like, where the hell's my muscles? I've been working out for 10 years, so I feel that one. And then they do have an athletic-ish body, but they gain weight around the midsection. For the hormonal influence, it is dopamine. So dopamine we know is the feel-good chemical, but it's also the process and rewards chemical. When you can have a task to go straight for, this is where the Crusader thrives. So they treat it like a horse in terms of the blinkers on, that would just run to the finish line. When they can be clear on that, things are fantastic. They need regular meals to support that though. They have the morning chronotype, so the left side of the circle is typically your early birds. They're very logical thinkers. Sometimes they're almost seen as unemotional, which I've been told in the past. But we definitely do feel on a more deeper empathetic level versus showing it. And that's just the way the hormones work in terms of the logical processing. They like to follow rules unless they don't make sense, and then they'll tend to craft their own path, especially if they have a direction they need. Sorry guys, just had to start again. There was a lawnmower or whippersniffer that started as I got to Guardian. So when we look at the Guardian, what we understand about the Guardian is they have that more endodermic influence. With that endodermic influence, what we see is a thicker frame. They can be either short or tall. They can put on mass sort of everywhere, so body fat or muscle mass. And then they gain weight all around. So anywhere, like that's why we see the thicker frame rather than just like say the midsection for the Crusader. For the hormonal influence, what we notice is they have prolactin as their main driver. Prolactin is essentially a nurturing chemical. So it's something that releases more in women when they have children. And the reason is because you need to be more nurturing and caring if something's crying and carrying on, and you don't end up wanting to like hurt the baby, but you just look at this thing and it's doing all these things wrong and you still love and care for it. If you had less amounts of prolactin, that's where we find parents have issues with their kids, and the Guardian is naturally hardwired that way to be more of a caring, nurturing person. They can handle more stress. They have that physical and mental structure to be able to take on more mental load and physical load, like to lift things, etc. They're more enduring in nature. No snacking is something I found fascinating throughout my studies. It's always like eat 6 meals a day, do this, do that. And when we removed snacking from these Guardians and got them eating at the right time, we found they weren't even hungry. They were like, I had this Islander bloke and he's like, oh, like, Josh, I don't get it. Like, I'm not going back for seconds. I don't feel Islander anymore.
And yeah, when we can get your body doing the right things, I guess it just wants the right things at the right time and the right amounts, which is cool. They have greater physical strength, bigger bodies, bigger muscles. They crave stability, so that is their number one go-to. The interesting thing I learn a bit later, when they're stressed, they want to put on weight to feel more stable and structured. We can look at cases where people said they've had trauma and they just pack on weight. This could be an explanation for that because they find comfort in stability, and it's like, I can protect people by being bigger. It's like biologically intertwined to them, which I find fascinating. They're calm, compassionate listener. So it's funny, they have like the connector, which I haven't talked about, but they say if you have a connector and they have a guardian friend, they're going to be like fantastic because one's like just talks their feelings out loud. And then the guardian's the one that's able to take that, whereas other health types may struggle a little bit with just listening to someone express themselves constantly out loud. They're also a late chronotype, being on that endomorphic side. We noticed that the afternoon works best for them. And as I said previously, we had guardians who we transferred from morning training to afternoon training and absolutely changed how well they could perform in class, but also their weight and everything else shifted as well as their sleep, their ability to sleep better and stuff. They need to have then do. So waking up a guardian, getting to jump in an early boot camp, smash themselves, just really is an effective way for them to feel good. It actually stresses them out, peaks their cortisol, and they spend the rest of the day trying to recover. The leaf blower guy strikes again, so we'll see. I'll check if there's any sound, and if not, I'll let it go, but I'll redo it if it is just a bit disturbing. So as you can see, we have two sides of the circle where we have the crusader who can wire themselves for hard things and just really wants to push through in order to achieve a mission, where you have the guardian who really prefers to be stable, secure, and just have that family connection around them to feel whole. When we look at the next two, so we're looking at the connector and sensor. So connector at the top, that has that mesodermic and endodermic influence, and then the sensor at the bottom, which has more of the ectomorphic influence. What we notice is so many differences. Like the connector is more open, more extroverted, and the sensor is more introverted. And we'll dive into that as we go through. So when we look at the connector, as I said, that mesoderm, endoderm influences, they sit on the 150 to 210 degrees for the circle. They're more muscular and fat mass they can hold, mesomorphic, but still have bigger joints compared to the activator side. They gain weight with stress, and they do have the strongest gut, so they can get away with eating a variety of things. For their hormonal influence, it's more around oxytocin. So they get energized by other people, they crave connection, they give and receive affection. They need variety. It's like one of the spices of life for them. Emotional, so they can be a little bit emotional. They are highly adaptable because they do want to be friends with everyone. They just find a way to kind of be like a chameleon. They can adapt to either chronotype, so they can be morning or late. And then what we also notice is one of the health types that needs the most sun. If they do not get sun, they will be depressed, one of the fastest. So I found that pretty interesting. There's also a story just to carry this a bit further in terms of kids. So this stuff influences kids as well. It works for us our whole life. And Dr. Cam, as a head educator, told a story around his son and just said like his son was playing up a little bit at school. He was a connector and had to encourage the teacher to be able to show a bit of care and affection for the child in a professional manner. And by doing so and letting this kid just feel these rushes of oxytocin because he felt supported and whatnot, actually dramatically changed the behavior of the child because he wasn't lashing out in order to receive attention. So when you can understand these things, you can absolutely change the way you function, or other people can handle life better because they understand what works best for them, which I find really cool. In terms of the sensor, so the sensor is that ectomorphic type person. They sit between 30 and 330 degrees, less muscle and fat mass. They have longer femurs. They lose weight with stress. Remember I talked about the testosterone, so they do have lower levels of testosterone, longer femurs develop, lose weight with stress, and they have a weaker gut. So we do need to take care of the food that we feed the sensor. For their hormonal influence, we're looking at things like Byzantine. For the sensor, they struggle with physical stress. They can handle mental stress. They really love mental load and like analytically navigating things. And you'll find more, it's kind of like that stereotype of the nerdy type person. Typically you see that skinnier person. And it's just funny how some of these stereotypes play out when you start to understand biology. They crave order and they love logical processes. They like to follow rules. small frequent meals like a bird. They introverted in nature. They have a mixed chronotype, so they can do either morning or night. Just high intensity activity in the morning can be a little bit negative for them because the mental recovery isn't quite there, and then they can't do what they want during the day as easy. They can be very direct and no filter, and I have a client that's like this, and I find it incredibly funny now that I know she's just like, she's built that way. And it's even helped her. I talked on the last podcast, super interesting. She was having trouble at work. She was really stressed. She wasn't able to do her work because the boss, potentially an activator, kept changing the target, the way to do it, all these sorts of things. And she just understood herself after doing the program and was like, oh my God, like told him what she needed. And he's like, look, I'm sorry. I'll take a step back. I'll let you do what you need to do. She ended up putting things in place, working towards the goals, increasing company profit, and eventually she got promoted to CFO and he got the sack. So incredibly powerful understanding yourself. So throughout this, guys, I want you to really understand, like, these are the health types. These are a little bit about the science around it. And when we can understand that we're built for a purpose, even when we look at sport, like most sports have this certain type of body shape that's going to be best suited to the outcome of the activity. You're not going to get someone who's built like a guardian coming first in a marathon. It's just the body isn't built for that purpose. But if you wanted to lift the most weight, then that is going to be the perfect person. So when we can understand our purpose, we can move towards that and do things we enjoy and enjoy life a lot more because we actually understand what our body is good at, and we're going to enjoy things we're good at. Most of the time people hate things they're not good at. So getting an understanding of that, we can then channel our focuses. And when you do something you're good at and you prefer to be at, you're going to want to get better at it as well. So it just keeps accelerating and folding over itself. And then also wired for success. So when it comes for purpose or even genius, essentially, so what you do for work, understanding how you are wired, what environments are going to work best for you, as I said with my sensor client, and how to communicate your needs and put yourself in a position that you can use your genius for success is ultimately going to lead to you having a happier, less stressed life, which impacts your health, your weight, all those sorts of things. But to finish it off, I didn't have it quite written here, but understanding that each health type has its own priorities. So when we look at some people, let's say the guy who wrote the 5 a.m. club, saying that's where success lies. If you were a guardian to think you need to be the 5 a.m. club, but you're a late chronotype and you're pushing towards his ideal because it works for him, that's when we're getting these mismatches occur. That's when we're getting people feel out of alignment with themselves. And then they're angry because their body's not working how they think it needs to, when the truth is they just don't understand how it needs to work. Each health type has its own lifestyle priority as well. So food and fitness is good for everyone, don't get me wrong. But if you're not noticing results from improving those things, we need to look at your lifestyle priorities, which are unique to each individual. And I'll do a podcast on that as well. And essentially work on the top 3 to reduce biological stress within your body so that you can feel good, recover better, and then see results. I hope you guys found this interesting. The list of science, I'll finish with one more thing, sorry. The list of science involved in this sort of approach. So we have phenotypology, embryology, anthropometry, nutrigenomics, which is like nutrition, exposomics, so the environment around you and how that influences your genes, molecular biology, chronobiology, study of time, geomedicine, so your location in the world, traditional Chinese medicine has footprints of that, which is incredible, ancestry, genetic lineage, so understanding your genes, like some of the Diplo people having more of that, we say Viking hereditary. Then we look at endocrinology, so that the science of hormones and how they influence your body and behaviors. Semiotics, which is the body shape. Ayurveda, so a 5,000-year-old ancient Indian disease prevention methodology, which is really interesting. Neuropsychology, and then epigenetics. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. If you have questions, please put them below. I'd love to support people through this process, understanding themselves better. We're seeing incredible results across the board. Hopefully when you talk to me, we've done a lot more, but I've used about 66 people in the last, I think it's almost 12 months now, and they're just loving this new level of awareness that they have. So if you want to find out more, just head over to my Instagram, spark up a chat, and we can go from there. Have a great one, guys.